Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. The new German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, during his first visit to Poland as Chancellor, said that Germany will support Poland in the hybrid war with the Lukashenko regime and that Europe cannot accept attacks on independent countries. The German Chancellor also emphasised Germany's wish to continue fruitful economic cooperation with Poland.
We're
opening a new chapter in Polish-German relations as we have a change of government on the German side. This is a symbolic moment. Olaf Scholz's visit to Poland took place in the first week after he assumed office as German Chancellor, which confirms that Poland is an important economic and political partner for its western neighbour. It is very important to me that in the first week after taking up the post of Chancellor, I was able to visit Poland and meet Prime Minister MATEUSZ Morawiecki. We have already talked in different contexts before, and in Germany we had the opportunity to talk face to face, and I am all the gladder that we can continue these talks. The meeting was not limited to an exchange of courtesies. Prime Minister MATEUSZ Morawiecki raised the contentious issues that bother not only Poland, but also Poland's neighbours. I pointed out to the Chancellor the risks involved in the opening of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline and how quickly the scenario I warned about could come to pass, that the risks to Ukraine could increase significantly. Chancellor Scholz assured Prime Minister MATEUSZ Morawiecki of his support in the context of the migration crisis on the Polish-Belarusian border. Hybrid activities must end and we will support Poland in its activities. We cannot allow ourselves to be blackmailed. It is therefore clear that Europe must make it clear that it will not accept this. In the opinion of Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Paweł Jabłoński, Scholz's visit to Warsaw, shortly after taking office, confirms a close cooperation between our countries. At the same time, he does not envisage a fundamental change in Polish-German relations. It was a very important visit, one of the first visits of the new German Chancellor, which reflects the reality very well, because Poland is for Germany one of the most important partners in Europe and in the world. Even if the Polish and German governments disagree, it does not change the fact that our cooperation is very strong and very intense, especially when it comes to economic cooperation. In turn, according to political scientist Dr. KAZIMIERZ WÓYCICKI, Polish-German relations are very tense at the moment and Olaf Scholz as Chancellor is unlikely to warm them up. The events which took place during this visit confirm that these relations are rather cool, that a fundamental divergence of interest exists. Despite the difficult past, Prime Minister MATEUSZ Morawiecki expressed his hope for a decisive change in the attitude of the German government towards its equal treatment of the Polish minority in Germany. We treat the German minority as we do, but also other unhealed wounds from our history.
The Prime Ministers of the Visegrad group of countries and the President of France are meeting in Budapest. The main topic of the talks is the current geopolitical situation in Europe, with particular emphasis on the dangers of illegal migration and the crisis caused by energy prices. Poland Daily's Alexander Wojciechowski is in the Hungarian capital to cover the summit.
Prime Minister Morawiecki started his visit in Hungary from visiting of the very special museum, a terror house that tells the story of totalitarianism, Nazi and Soviet. This reminds us how fragile is present-day freedom and democracy that we experience in Europe. On the other hand, the meeting of the Visegrad Four is concerned about the energy issues, the rising prices of the natural gas, the rising prices of fuel, the rising prices of the emission transfer certificates, as well as about security that reminds us situation in Ukraine and in Belarus. Definitely, the discussions here will have continuation in upcoming European Union summit that starts in Wednesday in Brussels. For Poland Daily, Alexander Wierzejski.
French President Emmanuel Macron and Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban dropped their usual combative rhetoric and called each other partners at today's summit in Budapest, treading, some might say, a fine line between advancing priorities and political posturing.
Macron, an ardent EU supporter who cast himself as the leader of a progressive camp, has pointed to a cultural battle over immigration, the rule of law and minority rights with Orban, a nationalist champion of illiberal democracy. The French leader, who is taking over the rotating presidency of the European Union on the 1st of January, also has to find allies in the bloc to advance domestic priorities such as getting the European Union to label nuclear energy as sustainable and therefore subsidisable. Hungary's relation towards President Macron is that of respect, Orban said in a joint statement to the press ahead of the Visegrad summit. I would like to make it clear that Hungary's relation towards President Macron is that of respect, and because France is the home of the encyclopedists, they are the best when it comes to definitions, so we accept their definitions. What we heard lately from Mr. President is that we are political opponents and at the same time European partners. Macron responded in kind to Orban's quip. My view of our Europe is that it first rests upon, as it has been said, an attachment to our countries, but also will to respect each other and work together. And so, as the Prime Minister said, now we have political disagreements which are well known, but we have the willingness to work together for Europe and to be loyal partners. Orban said he supported Macron's move to make the European Union more self-sufficient in the fields of defence, nuclear energy and farming. The conciliatory tone of the two leaders' public statements stood in stark contrast to the venom with which they harangued each other in the past, but Macron nonetheless used the trip to Budapest to send subtle messages of support to Orban's opponents. He kicked off his trip to Budapest by laying a wreath at the tomb of a philosopher who opposed Orban, and later in the day met leaders of the opposition alliance that is set to challenge Orban in an election next year. Orban has in the past 2 months received far-right leaders Marine Le Pen and Eric Zemmour, who are candidates in France's presidential election next year, in which Macron is expected to seek a second term. Both praised Orban's opposition to immigration, and Zemmour hailed his defence of his country's identity, sovereignty and borders.
It's the 40th anniversary of the declaration of martial law by the former communist government. On the night of December the 12th, 1981, martial law was introduced as power was seized by a military junta led by General Wojciech Jaruzelski. Ceremonies have been held throughout the country to commemorate the tragic events when the authorities turned against their own nation.
During the ceremony commemorating Grzegorz Szemek, a high school graduate who died as a result of injuries after being beaten by the police, President Andrzej Duda recalled that the crimes committed at the time had still not been fully accounted for. The communists haven't really yet answered for their crimes. Yes, down with communism and down with the Communist Supreme Court. I would also say, because that has not even been fully settled yet, I hope that a free, sovereign, independent Poland will finally deal with those problems. Underground NSZ activist Kinga recalled that as a result of martial law at least several dozen Poles lost their lives, including 9 miners from the WOJEK mine during the pacification of the strike. We live in the free Poland thanks to certain people, thanks to those people who gave their lives for Poland. In the morning, a mass for the victims and repressed people was held, led by Archbishop Marek Jędraszewski, Archbishop of Krakow. At the same location, at the Museum of the Cursed Soldiers and Political Prisoners of the People's Republic of Poland in Warsaw, a commemorative plaque entitled "They Died for Free Poland 1981 to 1989 was unveiled. At this time, 40 years ago, several thousand Polish patriots were imprisoned in internment camps, most of the NSZZ Solidarity. Those who remained at large began protests, strikes and demonstrations. Blood was shed. President Andrzej Duda presented the centenary medals of regained independence to distinguished activists of NSZZ Solidarity, participants of the democratic opposition in the Polish People's Republic, and people who cherish the memory of Polish history. Each nation may build a good future only when it knows, respects and understands its past. There is nothing to celebrate here. There is, however, something to remember, and we must say loudly that we remember and will not forget all those murderers from Jaruzelski's junta. Prime Minister MATEUSZ Morawiecki pointed out over the years the attitudes of the perpetrators of martial law, including General Wojciech Jaruzelski, have been relativized. He and his accomplices were made into tragic heroes, Greek heroes with no way out. And that was the big lie of a certain newspaper, a great lie of the Third Republic, a big lie that they tried to lay on us. In turn, the editors of Tygodnik Solidarność organised a debate on the subject of martial law and solidarity. It was attended by the Minister of Education and Science, Przemysław Czarnek, historians and journalists.
General Wojciech Jaruzelski
General Wojciech Jaruzelski was no national hero, but he was a traitor to the Polish nation and a traitor to Polish interests, who made the decision, along with his communist comrades, to bring in martial law for one reason, the one that is in the title of our conference. He was afraid of the Solidarity movement in a panicked way.
Panicznie bał się fenomenu ruchu Solidarności.
The president of the Institute of National Remembrance, Dr. KAROL NAWROCKI, presented the Crosses of Freedom and Solidarity to 41 activists of the anti-communist opposition, including Adam Borowski, who is currently the head of the Polish newspaper club in Warsaw. The cross is a symbol of readiness for sacrifice, sacrifice for fellow man, and for all, but even more so, a symbol of the victory of good over evil. At 7:30 p.m, President Andrzej Duda lit the Light of Freedom on Marshal Józef Pilsudski Square in order to commemorate the victims of martial law.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, have a good night and a better tomorrow.